If you only have 10 minutes in your day, 10 minutes in nature, studies have shown will reduce your stress and anxiety.
This is Jessica DeAngelo. She's the Chief Hiking Officer and strategic visionary behind the brand Hike to Become. She's a trailblazer in nature-inspired business consulting, offering transformative experiences for leaders and their teams. As an expert in business strategy and an avid hiker, Jessica discovered that most of her business breakthroughs happen on the hiking trail. She started her company to focus on empowering others to tap into the same clarity and authenticity through being in nature, in movement, and unplugging. She's the creator of the Hike 31 Challenge. Her mission is to harness the power of nature and inspire everyone to discover their authentic self and create their strategic vision. Great day, everyone. I'm Mike Pulaski, former world champion quarterback, serial entrepreneur, and award-winning TV producer and host. I've lived a life dedicated to mastery through performance and mindset integration. Each week, I'll bring you the insights, strategies, and stories from some of the world's top performers to help you unlock your greatness. Whether you're an athlete aiming for the top or an executive driving your team to victory, this is where you learn how to train your greatness to become an everyday great. Now let's get after it. Well, my good friend Jessica DeAngelo is here with me today, and I got to tell you, this is a treat for me because Jess and I did a little trail walking down in Texas together, and every time we speak at the same place or every time we go to meetings, we love to hang because we have very similar interests. Jessica, hey, I just want to say welcome to the Everyday Great podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike, so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And as you know, I really appreciate our walks when we hang out together as well. So grateful for this opportunity to chat with you.
So, and the reason I wanted to have you on is because I wanted to share you with my audience, share your thoughts with my audience. We've talked about it a ton. I just think the world needs to hear what you're doing now because it's inspiring and it's unique, especially in today's corporate world. But it's really curative too for people. And so we'll get to all that stuff coming up here. There's a lot coming in. But I want you to start off with how you went from being in the corporate office, being corporate, to now taking CEOs and directors and presidents on trail hikes as part of what you do.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, well, I've spent my career in corporate. I used to be a regional vice president and a global account director for mission-based companies. And I worked with some of the largest clients in the world, I think the largest companies in the world, Fortune 10s. And while I really enjoyed the work and what I was doing, I always sort of felt this pull that I had my own mission and my own way that I could inspire people. I also, several years ago, had this big epiphany, Mike, and I haven't really shared this with anyone publicly yet. But the epiphany for me was I didn't want to spend every working day I had either on a plane or stuck behind a Zoom or Teams call every day. That was really important to me. And I remember saying to my husband, Steve, I said, I think I just need to reinvent myself so that I can be showing up more authentically and doing work in a different way. And he was like, well, what does that look like? And I was like, I don't know. Great question. I don't know. And so this is an idea that I've sort of been noodling on for, I would say 3 or 4 years about how do I show up authentically as myself. And then it wasn't until about this past winter where I had a really tough few weeks. I was working too hard. I was feeling burnt out, stressed out, like on autopilot. And I did what I always do, which is I went for a hike in nature to gain some clarity. And it was like, I left the house at like 5:30 in the morning. It was still dark and cold out. You know, I live in Idaho, so it was like fresh snow on the ground. Hiked up to the top of this Boise foothill and just sat and watched the sun come up. And I started asking all the wrong questions first, which is what we do, right? Well, why isn't this working? What am I doing wrong? You know, why am I failing at this? And then as I'm sitting there watching the sun come up, I'm like, wait a minute. What if I asked the questions around when was I the happiest in my life, right? Like when was I the most fulfilled? When was I the healthiest? And that's when like the universe, I joke that the universe politely slapped me around and was like, well, it's always been when you were in nature and hiking regularly. And I was like, oh. And that was sort of the catalyst for me wondering, well, why can't I do this with my clients as well? If it's been so powerful for me to reach this place of being happy and fulfilled, why can't I bring this into my business?
Well, I think that's fantastic, and it's funny because we all get to thinking that way, right? We have the pressure on us, and we have life bearing down on us, and we have deadlines, and we have everything else coming at us,
Right.
and we're thinking about why am I not handling all this stuff?
Yeah.
And we always forget that we are like 200 years removed from living in nature,
Yeah.
from being part of and kind of in the rhythms of nature. And so I love what you're doing. It seems so natural. And without like getting granola munchy, that kind of thing, right? It's a part of what we do, and it's a big part of what we're missing. What have you seen for responses so far from people when you present this?
Sure. So, I mean, initially there's a lot of intrigue. I think, you know, in a post-pandemic world where people have gotten so used to working entirely remote and being a bit disconnected from each other, the intrigue of one, being in person again, and two, having an experience, like an immersive experience versus another Zoom call is really intriguing to people. So the response has been overwhelmingly positive. And I've started really just recently, Mike, incorporating this with like when I start to do consulting or executive coaching. And what I'm finding is that by starting our engagement with a guided hike, kind of like what you and I did in Dallas, when we get to my office to write someone's strategic plan or start working on their career goals, I mean, it happens fast. Like I'm talking within 20 minutes, we're writing down their strategic plan versus 3 hours of brainstorming. So I'm starting to see just how powerful this is, not just for myself, but as I practice it in the consulting I'm doing.
Well, it's amazing, and Jess has a forward copy of my book here, so
Thank you.
she's one of the original readers on this. But I talk about this throughout my book in the fact that we get in this place as people where we're either avoiding, we're holding back, or
Yep.
we're going forward, we're moving, we are engaging, and we are embracing life. And nature has a way of making us embrace life, of making us look outward, of opening us up. And I love the fact that you're doing that. You and I have talked about this. I go on my morning walk every single morning. I lost my dad in 2006. I had massive anxiety, for a while due to health issues. And so I go up the hill and I find an east-facing hill where I can literally reconnect with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting out there in nature, it just brings me peace and it brings me comfort, and I feel engaged and connected. And it sounds like what you're doing is doing that same thing for clients.
That is correct. I think, something that we've bonded over, but maybe never openly discussed, Mike, is I also lost my father back in 1990. So I was young. I was, a very young child when that happened. And I was taught my love of nature by him. He was an avid hunter, fisherman. He was actually a high school biology teacher. And so I think throughout my life, I've had this gravitational pull to spend time in nature because it was the number one way I could feel like I was with him again, or connect with him, as you mentioned you do with your own dad. So I think, first and foremost, before I even got started with clients, what I realized is that the big challenge I was having in my own business and in my life, feeling kind of like frustrated or on autopilot and stressed out. We've all been there, right? Like that's the human experience. We've all had,
for sure.
You mentioned bouts of anxiety or like stress. And so what I realized is that by showing up for 30 minutes a day in nature, in movement, and the hardest one for everyone, unplugged from technology, you start to peel back all the layers of the stuff that doesn't matter, and you start developing a relationship with yourself again, which is so important, that is unencumbered with the noise of politics and everything that's happening today. So I would say before I even started helping my clients find this clarity, I found it within myself to be like, oh, this is what matters. And 75% of what I'm worried about truly doesn't. And so I think that's been one of the most powerful learning lessons for me.
So important. We get so caught up in without being in the moment, we get so caught up in everything going on, right? It's all this distraction, it's all this noise, no signal. And so we had just have everything coming at us, and we feel like we have to handle everything. And so we never stop and separate and take that beat, take that, just that moment. And all it takes is a moment of being present and thinking, okay, like, is this really going to hurt me? Is this really going to harm me? How do I handle this properly? And instead we become so reactive, and that reactivity is really what gets our nervous system spinning. It's what creates that problem for us. So I love, love, love what you are doing, and how you are doing it, because I find peace in nature. I mean, you can see up here, my dad taught me to fish when I was young. He felt that like a good father would teach their kid how to fish. And so he taught my brother how to fish. He taught me how to fish. And I ended up turning that into a lifelong passion that became my work, right? Hosting a fly fishing show for 15 years and a hunting show for another 10 years. And so it became something special for me. And so the outdoors is so near and dear to my heart. And I know that there's been studies recently that really kind of backs up what we're talking about, that there's literally science. It's not just, hey, it feels really cool, really groovy to be out there in the woods. Like that's not what's happening here. I know that there's science behind it. You've talked about some of it. I'd love for the audience to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what started me down this path is, realizing on the Boise foothill, like, hey, the times I was happiest, the most fulfilled, the least stressed was when I was in nature and hiking regularly. So after I challenged myself to hike for 31 days straight, the month of January, which you and I've joked about was like crazy idea, borderline.
In Boise, that's cold.
What was I thinking? But I did it. And so I would say a week and a half into that journey for myself, I started realizing I was sleeping better. I had less stress and anxiety. I was prioritizing my workday more efficiently. I was being more powerfully present with my kids, which is a top priority for me. So then it sent me down the rabbit hole. I'm very data driven. I love to research things. So I started looking through, okay, where can I find studies that prove that spending a certain allotment of time in nature or in movement and unplugged from tech will lead you to the incredible benefits that I'm experiencing. And while I couldn't find any studies that combined the powers of all three, what I was able to find is some interesting studies done on the Japanese art of forest bathing, which is called Shinrin-yoku. And
by the way, forest bathing doesn't mean you're naked out there.
That's correct. It does not mean you're naked. Think of a bath. Instead of bath terms, you're not getting clean. You are immersing yourself in the forest. And so that's different from what I practice because it's less focused on the movement. And we can get to that in a minute because I know you're really hip to that stuff.
Yeah.
But two really big components of forest bathing is stillness. And just think about it as if you're meditating in a forest, and also practicing silence. And that's where you're not really hiking with anyone or walking with anyone. You're sort of doing this meditative practice while immersed in nature is how I would almost describe forest bathing. And when they did studies, Mike, they compared a control group who did this practice in the forest versus a control group who practiced the same thing in the city. And the results were off the charts. I mean, the cortisol levels of the forest group dropped by I want to think, if I remember correctly, it was 15.8% plunge in cortisol levels. That's really significant because cortisol is your stress hormone. A reduction in heart rate and pulse. And so every time I've come across these scientific studies where they compared control groups in nature, I think it boils down to this. If you only have 10 minutes in your day, 10 minutes in nature, studies have shown will reduce your stress and anxiety. 20 minutes or more, you will start to reap the benefits of this enhanced emotional well-being, right? And you'll start to have those endorphins flowing. What I'm most curious about is 30 minutes or more will increase your executive functioning skills, your cognitive functioning skills. Your brain starts behaving differently. You're remembering information better. You're making more concise decisions. And what I've experienced is my biggest bursts of creativity have happened on a hiking trail after I've been hiking for at least 30 minutes. No surprise, but the studies do back it all up.
Well, I write in the morning because that's when I feel it. After I get back off my hike out of nature, is when I write. I can't wait because we're going to Finland in the end of July. I'm going to be a super genius when I come back because we're going to be in the forest like the whole time. It's going to be great.
I can't wait.
So
I'm jealous.
Finland has, like, we were just reading about this the other day. Finland has, I can't remember how many miles of trails, but it seems like every Finn alive, that's what they do. They all hike, they all camp, they all get in the wild, and they have this thing where they talk about, they have all these campfires in their national parks where you can literally just go grab a couple logs, throw them in the pit and light them, and they always keep it stocked with firewood. And it just stuck out at the top of my head. It says, "No self-respecting Finn doesn't have a sausage to cook for lunch on a hike." I was like, and so Susie asked me the other day, she's like, "What do you want to do on this hike?" I said, "I want to cook a sausage." That's I want to go out there and cook a sausage on a stick. So I'm going to be a genius, a sausage-eating genius at the end of Finland. It's going to be good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, I don't know if you've ever read any of those studies, Mike, that ranks the happiest countries in the world, but by far, I think it's Norway, Finland, and Denmark are always in the top 10 happiest countries in the world. And I think a big part of it is that they treasure spending time in nature and being outdoors.
Yeah, they have the outdoor culture. It's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how rejuvenating it is being in nature. I mean, you hit on several notes, right? I've seen study after study after study on meditation, right? On mindfulness and how it affects your cognitive performance, drastically increasing your cognitive performance. On the forest bathing, I saw that study on how that drastically increases your well-being and all the neurochemicals that help you feel better about your life. And then on exercise. And the exercise, obviously, it's a number one prescription since practitioners in the U.S. love to give pills first, but the top prescription is physical exercise. And so what you're doing is literally hitting on all three of those. And with our modern society and how everybody is constantly plugged into a phone or constantly jacked into a computer or a Zoom call or under deadlines for stress and catching emails at midnight, like we're just constantly connected. How important is it for people?
So I would say it is quite possibly one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that you can do to preserve your well-being, and also show up as a better person for everyone around you. It's funny you mentioned about exercise being the number one prescription. I had an MD, a doctor, probably 20 years ago tell me, "Hey, Jess, do you know that exercise beats Prozac in every controlled study that's ever been done?" Like
every controlled study.
And so part of what's been interesting, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, Mike, but I can't find a lot of studies that have compared nature to other things that you can make money off of, right? Like you can't really make money off of spending time in nature. And what I love so much about what I'm encouraging people to do, like especially with the Hike 31 challenge, which is where you replicate what I did the month of January and you commit to, yes, I'm going to do what Jess says to do. I'm going to hike for 30 minutes in nature, keep off my cell phone. I'm going to do it every day for 31 days. And
you don't have to do it in the snow.
And you don't have to do it in the snow. You don't have to do it in Idaho. But when people commit to that, what I'm hoping at the end of it is that they realize all the benefits I've been able to realize. And then they keep up the practice because they realize how important it is in their life. I will tell you, I have some clients or some busy executives say to me, "Well, Jess, I don't have 30 minutes in my day. And I'm going to call that." Yes, you do. We all do, right? We are making decisions on what we're willing to give up. But what I like to counter that with, Mike, is what if instead of looking at it like I don't have 30 minutes, what if I could give you 2 hours back in your day? Because on days that I wait to go on my hike until the afternoon or early evening, I'm way less productive in my work. I get distracted by a million things, entrepreneurship, right? Not only are we the person for everything, we're IT, we're HR, we're tech, as you've recently found out. So
you don't become an entrepreneur to save time.
No, not at all. But when I go for a hike and then I come back in my office, I get really clear about the 2 or 3 things that are vital for me to achieve that day, and everything else just goes away. It's punted to a later date. And so what I say to people that say they don't have 30 minutes, I'm telling them they can't afford not to use this 30 minutes because it will change the way they show up in the rest of their day.
It's so funny because as you started talking, what I wrote down was don't have time. people feel that all the time, right? They're like, oh, I'm so rushed. I don't have time. I can't get to this and I can't get to that.
Yep.
But what happens is you end up so scattered and so distracted and so in that avoid phase that you can't perform at your peak. As an athlete, we used to, you'd work out every single day. You had to show up with your best self, whether you felt it or not, every single day to improve, to get the team better. Like you were part of a whole. And so what you did is you prepped your body for that. You had a routine and you ate right and you trained right and you did all those things so that you could show up at practice and give the top performance for yourself. It's part of what I write about in the book, is that you are constantly training. Like no matter whether you're sitting there munching on a bag of Cheetos with a Mountain Dew or, you're in the gym lifting or you're in nature hiking, you are training your body to do something.
Yeah.
Because it's incredibly adaptive. And when you are taking people out on the trail, you are training them to be a little bit mindful. You are training them to take that beat. And I love that. What does it look like for somebody? So I know you keynote speak. I know you executive coach. I know you do all this stuff. What does this look like for one of your typical clients?
Yeah. So I think it all depends on how someone wants to engage with me. I love speaking, and I think being in corporate for many, many years myself, I've attended a lot of keynote speeches where the reality is and listen, you've been in sports a long time too. You go to these conferences, Mike, let's think about it. You're typically out of your element. You're not having access to the healthy food that you normally like to eat. Schedule's jam-packed. You've typically been sitting all day. And so the last thing you want to do is sit in a dark room for 2 hours and have someone talk to you, like regardless how inspiring that speech is.
Unless, of course, it's me.
Unless it's you.
I'm super inspiring.
You're super inspiring. And you know what? I would imagine too, in your speeches, you really engage the audience and probably get them up and moving at certain points, knowing you as a...
Yes, we do.
So what I'm trying to do a little bit different in the way I engage with like workshops, for example, or team building, or even like keynotes for smaller groups is we break the keynote up in half where we take the group out on a guided hike. We get all of those amazing benefits like reduced stress and anxiety, enhanced well-being. And then that cognitive function really starts turning on. And then that's when I bring everyone back to the room and I finish my content, which is all about these incredible skills we can learn in nature and how we apply them from the trail to the boardroom and how people can apply them as soon as they learn about them in sales or executive leadership. And so I think that's really important to get people up and moving. And that would be like a keynote experience with me that makes it different.
Yeah, for sure. So we heard your backstory, but why does this matter to you? Why are you bringing this to other people? That's the question.
So I think the biggest reason that I'm bringing it to other people is because there's 3 specific times in my life, which we don't have to get into right now, but there's 3 very specific times in my life, Mike, where I have either been in sort of a painful personal period or burnout at work, or just struggling with showing up every day and just not feeling uninspired. And each and every time that has happened to me over the last 10 years, the one way, and let me tell you, Mike, I tried it all. I tried meditating. I'm not very good at it. I tried self-help books. I tried self-help audiobooks. I tried talk therapy. And again, I'm not saying none of this stuff works. It does. But the big shift for me was when I took it into my own hands and just got out in nature, 30 minutes, got in movement, ditched the cell phone. I started reconnecting with myself in a way that authentically led me back to who I really wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in my life. And so why is this so important? Because I feel like so many people in our society today are struggling with similar feelings. And I want to be able to empower them to just take all that back through themselves and get to know themselves again.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I wanted people to hear that because, I know how much you care about other people. I know how much they matter to you, right? And so I wanted people to understand that about you. I can tell you firsthand, Jess is a good friend. And it's why I love her. It's why I wanted her on the show. She cares. She really cares about what she's doing for people at home. And I know from my experience with the anxiety, like it was so bad. Here I am, a guy who's on camera, and I'm scared to go outside, right? I used to play in front of 100,000 people, and I was almost agoraphobic. But then I recognized that it's literally your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems super basic to say it that way. But once I found my hang up, once I found the trauma that kind of put me there, all of a sudden I switched it off. And it's, if you control your nervous system, if you allow it to breathe, because right now that is what we are not doing. In our society, we are not allowing our nervous system, our vagus nerve, to breathe. And it is constantly feeling under pressure. It is constantly feeling attacked. And Marty Seligman, who's the psychologist, proved that learned helplessness is actually not learned. It's our natural state, right? To freeze is our natural state.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn to gain control through doing things like what you're talking about, like taking people on a hike, like getting them outdoors. We learn control by taking control for ourselves, which is why it works so well for you. That's why when I took action, when I had the anxiety, I would sit inside and I would hold back, and I wasn't taking action. I wasn't taking control. And so I never had control. And since I didn't have control, there was nothing I could do about it, and I let it spiral. But as soon as I took control of what I was doing, that made a huge difference. And there's a ton of science behind it. I won't go into the science right now, but moving forward, all of that stuff, like it calms your nervous system, makes it happen for you. What kind of results, to move on, have you heard from your clients?
So, it's interesting. I would say similar results to what I've experienced. The number one thing that people are reporting when they practice this, when I take them on guided hikes, I mentioned like at the start of a coaching engagement or like an entrepreneurial strategy session, is clarity, extreme clarity. We reach, we'll brainstorm sometimes on the hike, or my clients can choose to hike in silence and just get their body moving and all the things, and I'm there to support them if they need it. But this extreme clarity that has been evading them for months, years even, about their purpose, how they want to show up in life. We talk about who their ideal client is, or maybe what's not working for them. So everything's on the table during this guided hike. And what clients are reporting and what I'm seeing them go through is things that I think would take multiple sessions and several hours each session to get to this point are taking a lot less time, because we're using this principle of being in nature, being in movement, and unplugging from tech, that we can get solutions to our answers really fast. And what I'm really good at, I almost like joke, I'm like a business therapist, is I will talk people through, okay, so who do you think you want to serve, or how do you want to show up? And then I'll challenge them a bit. And it's interesting, on the hiking trail, you get very different answers from people than you would sitting in an office space and a whiteboard. So I think clarity is the biggest thing. And then with teams and sort of more like keynote speaking or workshops and engagements, it's this feeling of connection with each other again that we're also desperately missing, in that people not only leave my engagements feeling inspired and motivated, but a lot of, it's so sweet. Some people have come up to me after my keynote engagements and they're like, Jess, like, not only did I feel inspired, but like my body feels physically different. Like I feel better. Like I'm not sitting anymore. You didn't make us sit the whole time. Thank you. I know, Mike, this sounds silly and so like stupid, but their brain is now ready to absorb all the rest of the day's other information in a completely different way, versus feeling like just to the fill of the information that they can absorb. So that's what clients are really reporting, and more to come on that front, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, so you're going to make me go down that road, right? So that's the science. In that when you get them moving, it shuts down the amygdala, right? So the amygdala is what creates our stress response. When our stress response fires, we are more prone to look for threats, more prone to feel stressed than we are to find answers. And so we are not thinking outwardly, we're not thinking creatively when we are under stress. But when you get them moving forward, you literally inhibit the amygdala and you engage the prefrontal cortex. And when you do that, now we're in that creating, thoughtful processing phase, which helps us to get better at the job of exactly the things that you were talking about. On top of that, when they do it with you, I know how good you are at connecting, like, because we formed that connection. And I love it. You're like a trail/business therapist. It's great. Jess has been that for me on a number of occasions here. It's fantastic. How important is that connection piece for you? Mm-hmm. Because the nature by itself, right? I go on my hikes in the morning in nature and it's fantastic, but doing it with you or with somebody who understands it, how important is that connection piece of it?
So I think twofold. One is I am still adamant that everyone should practice this hike alone by themselves, the 30 minutes a day. I think that's really important, as you've experienced and you practice on your own in your morning hikes. I don't think one should substitute the other. So I want to be really clear about that, like you owe yourself that sacred date, I call it, every day. But how important is it that clients experience this with me? I've seen tremendous forward movement in what we can accomplish in a shorter duration. And I think a more succinct strategic plan, something that feels a lot more authentic to who they truly are after the guided hike versus clients I've had prior to incorporating this in my business. It just takes us a little bit longer to find our way. And so I love embracing this in what I'm offering. And I think it's so important. I really, moving forward in my business, it's a staple that we hike together first before we start our engagements. And it gets us to a place really fast of that extreme clarity I talked about.
Yeah. Now I love the fact too, that you are not just doing this like as an executive coach, as a corporate coach, but you also just got your nature first responder, right? Wilderness first responder. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, super funny, but I started to, as one does in entrepreneurship, you start building something. And then as you're building it, you're like, oh, I need to fit this piece. And I realized, I hiked by myself quite a bit in the Boise foothills, and I've never encountered a situation where I really felt unsafe. However, things happen all the time. And I'm talking like twisted ankle, bee sting, different things. And I remember I was talking to Steve, my husband, one night, and I'm like, if I'm going to be taking people out on a hiking trail and something happens, I need to be in a place where I know how to handle that situation. So, this a couple months ago, I actually went through the Knowles Wilderness First Responder Program. It was a hybrid program, and I learned all about the various things that can happen on a trail. So a wilderness first responder is different from what you would call like a front country first responder. Like if you and I were together, Mike, and we would see something happen, obviously you call 911 first. But if I'm with someone in the backcountry and it takes a lot of time before a paramedic can arrive or 911 can arrive, I'm really well equipped to deal with a variety of situations, be that snake bite, hypothermia, even altitude sickness, a variety of strains, sprains, different things. And you're an avid outdoorsman yourself. Like I can't fend off a grizzly, right? But like I might be able to help patch you up afterwards. But stable. So
a lot of patching,
right? My goal is to just stabilize someone enough, and then take really thorough. They call them SOAP notes to be able to prep the actual first responders that get there, so that whoever I'm with and whatever happens that situation, I'm ensuring that they have a much better chance of making it out of there with the best possible care. So it was fun. And I got to do this with a bunch of kids. I was one of the oldest people in the class. It was like a lot of river guides and like hiking guides, which was cool. But we spent 5 days, like 12-hour days, Mike, and it was scenario after scenario and we did it like real time in nature. That's one day it was like raining. It was like torrential downpours. Luckily, like we were dressed for the weather, but I'm trying to like take my SOAP notes on this pretend patient who's a real student. And like my SOAP notes are just melting. Like I can't even, it's that big, but it was nice. It was nice to be challenged that way and have to make decisions in the natural elements. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And now I feel so much better that when I take a group out hiking or even an individual that, something should happen, I feel really well equipped to handle that situation.
Oh, that is awesome. I got an answer for you for taking notes in the rain too. I work for a company called Write in the Rain.
Okay.
And you can literally, they have paper that's designed for it, pens that are designed for it. You can literally write in the rain. You're good to go. It's fantastic stuff. I'd never seen it before. And then I helped do a commercial and some content for them.
Cool.
And it's really cool stuff. So I'll send you some of that. You'll love it.
That would be great.
Little unpaid promotion there for Write in the Rain. But if you want to write while you're in the rain, this is the stuff for it. I saw your post the other day on LinkedIn about taking the family out.
Yeah.
And it was such a cool post. Like it's such a cool thing because what you're doing isn't just for executives and corporations, but people who start bringing this into their everyday lives now can pass this on to their families as well. We have removed ourselves from nature, right? We've been a part of nature. It's been a part of what we do for our entire existence as a species. And since we were before we were the formed species that we are now. So like it's been a part of everything that we do. And then we remove ourselves and we put ourselves in these big cities and in front of TVs and with computers in our pockets that we're constantly on. And all of a sudden we think that we're just going to feel natural about that that's all okay, that our body handles that. And our kids now are getting it even worse than we did. And so it's tougher. And so how important is it for parents and families to pass this along to their kids, to give them nature?
Yeah. So thanks. One of the main reasons I actually went down this road, I mean, first and foremost, to honor my dad and just how he really endeared me to spending time in nature. But also, if I look back through my life, Mike, my husband proposed to me on a hike. We got married at the top of Mount Rainier on a hike. Nice. My daughter was on a hiking trail. We had her swaddled and on my chest at 6 weeks old. Yeah. It's so important. It's so important. And, now today, like I'm a busy working mom. I have 2 toddlers. So I have a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And I will tell you that when they hit their wall, we get out in nature, right? And so, yes, I posted on LinkedIn. This past weekend in Boise was gorgeous. The kids were really like rammy. And so my husband and I were like, all right, well, let's pack them up and go for a hike. And my point in all that was it was not glamorous. We did not get far on the hike. There were lots of snacks. There was lots of whining. But it was beautiful in that we all got out in nature together. My 1.5-year-old has just started walking, and there he is like walking on a trail with us and holding my hand. And my daughter has become such a little like outdoor hiker that now anytime we go on a group hike, she's like, I'm going to lead. And it's so important. I'll tell you this sort of last thing about getting kids out in nature. Nothing means more to me than when a client tells me that because of our engagement together, they took their family hiking and now their kids are asking them to take them hiking more. So I have this client, we went hiking a few weeks ago, and I got a text message from him this past weekend. And he's like, oh my God, he has 3 boys. He's like, I took my 3 boys and my wife out hiking on the same trail we did. And that we had a great time. And he's like, and 2 days later, my youngest, who's 7, is like, Dad, can we go on a hike again? Like, that is so much more rewarding to me to hear that than anything else in my business, is because I know that my work is having a ripple effect to get more people out in nature and reconnecting with each other.
Yeah, and it's the moments that the kids come back to too, because that's when they felt that peace. Some of my favorite times with my son Casey was getting him out. When I would do my fishing shows, every year we would do a Father's Day show. I would get him out on the river with me. He has fished, the Box Canyon of the Henry's Fork River. He's fished the South Fork of the Snake. He's been on the Madison up in Montana. He's been on the Beaverhead in Montana. He's fished the Eastern Sierras with me. We have pictures with him catching steelhead on the Trinity River here.
Wow.
And so getting him out with me from the time, literally as a 4-year-old catching steelhead was great. Like those are some of the moments. And just recently, he just turned 23 the other day. Just recently he got back to me. He's like, hey, when are we going to go fishing again? Like those are the times. And with my dad, when I was, I went away to school, became a grown ass man while I was away, and I wasn't connected. And my dad was such a huge piece of my life, my mom too. And I don't give my mom nearly enough credit because she was amazing. But my dad was always my dude. And he was kind of my confidant and the guy that I would lean on when I was, feeling stressed out. And so in the summer, in my junior year, I want to say, I called him up and I said, hey, let's go over to the Eastern Sierras and go fishing for a week. Me and you, like, let's do that thing again that we used to do when I was a kid. And that's where I reconnected with my dad in nature, in the wild, doing what he had taught me to do. And he told me then, and later, he's like, that's when I knew that the parenting thing was working. Because like here, I want to share those times with him that he wanted to share with me when I was a kid. And so that, I just think that's such a cool piece of it, to share with the family, like to give that back, because it's one of the biggest pieces that we're missing, in my opinion, in modern society.
Yeah, I agree. And what an amazing, like, full circle moment you just had with your own son, Casey, calling you and saying, hey, let's go fishing, after you had a similar experience with your dad. And I think, parenting's the hardest and the most rewarding job out there. But I agree. Like, what better validation than to have your grown child come back to you and say, I want to spend quality time with you in the way you taught me to spend quality time together when I was a child. So I hope that by taking my two little kiddos for hikes now, that at a later date, I'm getting similar phone calls that say, hey, mom, I'm signing us up for the lottery to do Havasu Falls. You in this year? Like that's what I can only hope for, is that my kids think I'm cool enough to hang out with as well in a few years.
Yeah, so cool, right? Because those moments are so few and far between as they grow up. And we all know, any adult knows that all of a sudden you start adulting and things change. When you're a kid, you have all this free time. You just think it's going to, you're going to rock on like that forever. And it never really happens that way. All of a sudden you have responsibility and you have work and you have all these other things that get on your plate. And you lose those connections with your parents, people who love you most in life. I think when my son was born, I called my parents and apologized. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'll never love you as much as you love me. That's never going to happen. I get it now. My bad. But I like to, I wanted to be respectful and show them how much I love them, because I do love. Mom came with us this year to the Trinity River, right? So that's what we do. We go to the wild when we do fun things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you mentioned it, earlier, that 200 years ago, as human beings, we were so much more in nature. It was just part of our life. It was what we did. And the more removed we get, I think the more problems we're seeing as a society. So I think for me, the big hypothesis is, even if we can get 30 minutes back a day in nature, in our own company, with no distractions, how could that shift our own consciousness?
Yeah, it doesn't even take a ton, right?
No.
It's just been a part of us for so long. And really the way that we're living now, people don't realize it, and if you don't study it, you don't think about it, because we all think tunnel vision. But it is so unnatural and so removed from what the human experience has been over the course of our history. And we like to think that we're crazy adaptable, and we are. We adapt, which is why we survive, which is why we've been the dominant species on this planet. But at the same time, there are certain parameters that your body wants to stay within, and things that make it happy. And being part of nature is a huge piece of that. Where can people find you, Jess?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is out. You can go to hike to
kick-ass website, by the way.
Thank you.
I just want to give you congratulations on that. I saw it as soon as it launched. I was like, oh, Jess is rocking it. This is awesome.
Thank you. It was many months of hard work. I had a fabulous website designer and some help along the way. So it's hiketobecome.com. You can find me there. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. It's just my name, Jessica DeAngelo. And yeah, please reach out to me. I am starting a Hike 31 challenge starting tomorrow, because May has 31 days in it. So anyone who wishes to join the challenge and hold themselves accountable, you can go on my website and scroll to the bottom of my homepage and just sign up for that challenge there. And I just want to inspire more people to get out in nature and really reconnect with themselves.
Oh, that is awesome. For anybody who hasn't and who doesn't know Jess online, find her, because she is awesome. Her message is awesome. And as good as her message is, she's a better person. I always feel better when I come away from my conversations with Jessica, because she's that kind of person. She'll be that kind of person for you as well. I love the fact that you came on. I think people can tell, how much I appreciate you and how great I think you are. And I appreciate you coming on here today.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor, Mike, and right back at you. I think your friendship is one of the best I've made in the past few months, and I'm just so grateful for our ability to connect and share information and bond over our walks in the woods to reconnect with our dads and just share, I think, these valuable tools that we both have for everyone else. So thank you. Thanks for the honor of joining you today and your audience.
Well, it was great to have you. Don't forget, at home, if you want to get my checklist, Mental Toughness, you can text 55444, text GREAT to 55444. You can get it there. I appreciate you guys coming on. I know you learned a lot today. It was a masterclass in why you need nature as part of your life. Reach out to Jess, find her online. Until next time, appreciate you guys. I hope that you go out and have an everyday great today.